When your only child looks you dead in the eye on Christmas Eve and tells you he doesn't need you anymore, something inside you stops breathing. Not your lungs, something deeper, something you didn't even know could die while you were still alive. I'm Loretta Hawkins, ready to the people who love me. 62 years old, breast cancer survivor, retired registered nurse, single mother who raised a boy into a man on night shifts and prayer. And on December 24th, I stood in my son's living room holding a tin of homemade snickerdoodles while his wife told me nobody needed my money or me. My son agreed. The cookies were still warm. I remember thinking how strange that was, how I'd spent 3 hours that afternoon in my kitchen measuring vanilla extract and rolling dough while Christmas music played from my phone. I'd hummed along to Silent Night, tied red ribbons around each tin, written their names in gold ink on little tags. My hands still smelled like cinnamon and butter. And now those same hands were trembling, not from cold, from something I didn't have a name for yet. Selena, my daughter-in-law, stood across from me with her arms crossed. She wore all black, not festive black, funeral black. Her expression matched. My son Dorian sat on the couch, staring at his phone, nodding along like she was reading the weather, and not dismantling his mother's heart. There were no decorations in their house, no tree, no lights, no warmth, just white walls and silence so thick I could taste it. I'd driven 40 minutes through holiday traffic to get there, past houses glowing with joy, past families laughing on porches, past the life I thought I'd built for us. But the moment that door opened, I knew. You know how you can feel a storm coming before the sky even changes? That's what this was, a pressure in the air, a warning I'd ignored for too long. "We don't need your money," Selena said again, slower this time, like I was hard of hearing, "if that's what this is." I wanted to ask what she meant, what she thought this was, but my throat had closed up. 30 years of nursing taught me how to stay calm in emergencies, how to keep my voice steady when someone's world was ending. But nobody teaches you how to breathe when your own son is the one holding the knife. Dorian finally looked up from his phone. His face was blank, empty, like I was a stranger who'd overstayed her welcome. "Yeah, Ma," he said, and his voice sounded tired, bored even. "We don't really need you." 6 words. That's all it took. 6 words to undo 62 years of love, of sacrifice, of every single choice I made to keep him fed, clothed, educated, and whole, while his father was out living a brand new life with a brand new family. I set the cookies down on their glass coffee table. My hands were steady now. Funny how shock does that. Freezes you solid so you can't fall apart in front of the people who just shattered you. There was an envelope in my purse, a manila one with important papers inside. Papers I'd been planning to explain tonight, gently, with love. But love wasn't in this room anymore. So I placed that envelope on the table next to the cookies. I said that's all I needed to hear. Quietly. Selena grabbed it before I could blink, ripped it open. Her eyes scanned the pages. Then she laughed, actually laughed. "So this is what you wanted to brag about?" She waved the papers at Dorian like evidence. "She thought we needed this." She tossed the envelope onto the counter. It slid across the marble and landed near the sink. My son didn't even look at it. And that's when I knew. This wasn't about tonight. This wasn't about Christmas. This was about something bigger, something colder, something that had been growing in the dark for years, while I was too busy loving them to notice. I reached for my coat, and I walked out of that house into the freezing December night, where the air felt warmer than anything I'd left behind. But what they didn't know, what neither of them could possibly understand, was that the papers in that envelope weren't an offer. They were a goodbye.
Let me take you back, because you need to understand how I got here. How a mother who gave everything ended up holding nothing. I was 23 when I had Dorian. His father, Marcus, was 25 and full of promises. We were going to build a life together, a real one, the kind with Sunday dinners and family vacations and gold anniversary parties. But Marcus left when Dorian was 4. Just packed his things one Tuesday morning while I was at work and moved 3 states over with a woman he met at a conference. No warning, no conversation, just gone. I came home to an empty closet and a note on the kitchen counter that said, "I can't do this anymore." That was it. 14 words to end a marriage and abandon his son. So, I did what you do when your world collapses. I got up the next morning. I made breakfast. I braided Dorian's hair. I smiled through every single crack in my chest because that baby didn't ask for any of this. And I worked. God, did I work. Double shifts at Grady Memorial Hospital, night shifts that bled into day shifts, weekends, holidays. I worked every hour I could get because Dorian needed food and clothes and a roof that didn't leak. He needed school supplies and birthday parties and a mother who didn't look defeated. My parents had left me one thing before they passed, a small duplex in southwest Atlanta. It wasn't much, 2 units side by side. The paint peeled, the floors creaked, but it was paid off. And I rented out the second unit to a quiet older couple who paid on time every month. That rental income kept us afloat during the hard years. And I saved every dollar I could squeeze out of my paycheck. Put it away quietly, never told Dorian the details because he was just a boy, and boys shouldn't have to carry their mother's burdens. Besides, he always said the same thing as he got older. "Mama, you don't need to worry about me. I'll take care of you one day." And I believed him. I believed him when he graduated high school with honors. I believed him when he got into Georgia State. I believed him when he landed his first real job at a marketing firm downtown and called me crying with joy. I believed him because that's what mothers do. We believe in our children even when the world doesn't. But then he met Selena. She walked into his life during his late 20s like she owned the air around her. Beautiful in that polished way. Designer handbags, perfect hair, a master's degree in business, and a job title I couldn't pronounce. She came from money, real money, the kind where your parents pay for your wedding without blinking. And from the moment I met her, I felt small. Not because she said anything cruel, not at first, but because of the way she looked at me, like I was a relic, a phase Dorian would outgrow. She'd smile at me during family dinners, but her eyes never smiled. They measured, judged, found me lacking. Still, I pushed it down. My baby was happy. He was in love. He was building the life I dreamed for him. So I kept my mouth shut. I showed up to their engagement party with a homemade cake. I helped Selena's mother fold 200 wedding programs the night before the ceremony. I wore the dress Selena picked out for me, even though it made me look like somebody's grandmother at a funeral. And I smiled. I smiled through the wedding, through the first year of their marriage, through every holiday gathering where Selena corrected my grammar in front of guests or cut me off mid-sentence to finish my stories herself. Dorian never said a word. He just laughed along, like it was all a joke I wasn't smart enough to understand. The first birthday they forgot was the hardest. I turned 60, you know. I'd made it through cancer treatment just 3 years before. My body was still recovering. My joints ached every morning from the medications. But I was alive. I waited all day for a call, a text, anything. Nothing came. 2 days later, Dorian sent a message. "Sorry, Ma. Work has been crazy." No happy birthday. No I love you, just an excuse wrapped in 2 sentences. The second time they forgot, I didn't wait. I didn't even mention it. I just marked it off as confirmation of something I'd been too afraid to admit. I was losing my son. Not to death, not to distance, but to indifference. The visits became strained. I'd drive out to their place in Buckhead, and Selena would answer the door looking annoyed, like I hadn't told her I was coming, even though I had, even though she had said, "Sure, stop by." Dorian would hug me, but it felt mechanical, obligatory, like hugging a coworker you don't really like but have to be nice to. And then there was the money. 3 years ago, Dorian got laid off. Budget cuts at his firm. He called me one night, voice shaken, saying they were behind on rent, that Selena was furious, that they might lose the apartment. I didn't hesitate. I pulled $11,000 from my savings account the next morning and transferred it to him. No questions, no lectures, just love in the form of a wire transfer. He cried on the phone, told me he'd pay me back as soon as he found a new job. That was 3 years ago. He never mentioned it again, not once. And when I finally brought it up one Sunday afternoon, casual as I could manage, he looked confused, like I was making it up. "Ma, that was a gift. You didn't say I had to pay it back." Selena jumped in before I could respond. "You can't just give someone money and then hold it over their head." I hadn't asked for it back. I just mentioned it. But the way they looked at me, like I was petty, like I was small, made me feel ashamed for even bringing it up. So I let it go. I let a lot of things go. The little comments, the eye rolls, the way Dorian stopped calling just to talk and only reached out when he needed something, the way Selena scheduled their vacations without asking if I wanted to come, the way I started feeling like a burden instead of a mother. I survived breast cancer at 55 with nothing but prayer, stubbornness, and a niece who drove me to every single appointment. Journey. My brother's daughter. I'd helped raise her during summers when she was young, taught her how to braid hair and bake cornbread and stand up for herself when the world tried to make her small. And when I got sick, she stood up for me. She took off work to sit with me during chemo. She cleaned my house when I was too weak to stand. She called every single day, even when I didn't answer, just to leave voicemails that said, "I love you, Auntie. You're going to beat this." Dorian visited twice during 6 months of treatment. Twice. And both times, he spent most of the visit on his phone. That's when I started seeing things clearly. When your body is fighting to stay alive, you notice who shows up and who doesn't. But even then, even with all the signs, I didn't expect what happened that Christmas Eve. I didn't think my son would look me in the eye and tell me he didn't need me. I didn't think I'd raise someone capable of that kind of cruelty. But I did, and he was.
The text came on December 20th, 4 days before Christmas. I was at the grocery store, pushing a cart through the baking aisle, trying to decide between vanilla and almond extract for my cookies. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. Selena's name flashed across the screen. "Dinner at 7 on Christmas Eve. Keep it simple. No need for extra stuff." I read it 3 times, standing there under the fluorescent lights while holiday music played overhead, trying to find warmth in those words, trying to convince myself it was an invitation and not an obligation. No, we'd love to have you. No, can't wait to see you. Just instructions, cold and clipped. I texted back, "Sounds wonderful. Can I bring anything?" 3 hours later, she responded, "No." 1 word. That's all I got. But I'm a mother, and mothers don't show up empty-handed to their children's homes on Christmas. So I spent the next 4 days preparing anyway. I baked 3 kinds of cookies, snickerdoodles, chocolate chip, and those little pecan sandies Dorian used to love as a kid. I stayed up late tying ribbons around the tins, writing their names in gold ink on small cream-colored tags. I wrapped their gifts with care. A leather wallet for Dorian, the kind he'd been eyeing online for months. I knew because I'd seen him scroll past it twice during our last phone call. And for Selena, a spa certificate to that fancy place in Midtown she always posted about on social media. I wasn't trying to buy their love. I just wanted them to feel seen, to know I paid attention. And then there was the envelope. I'd been carrying it around for a week. Manila, letter-sized, sealed with a small piece of clear tape. Inside were documents I'd been meaning to share with Dorian for months. My will, the deed to the duplex, statements from my savings account. Not because I wanted to brag, not because I needed credit, but because I thought it was time he knew. Time we had an honest conversation about the future, about what would happen to me as I got older, about what I'd built and who I wanted to leave it to. I thought Christmas Eve was the perfect time. Quiet, intimate, a night for family and truth. I got dressed carefully that evening, put on the navy blue dress I'd bought last year, the one with the soft fabric that didn't irritate the scars from my surgery. I clasped my mother's pearl necklace around my neck, sprayed a little perfume, looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, "It's going to be okay." But my reflection didn't believe me. The drive to their house took 40 minutes. Traffic was thick with last-minute shoppers and families heading to church services. I passed houses lit up like something out of a storybook, wreaths on doors, inflatable Santas in yards, families gathered on porches, laughing and waving at neighbors. I wanted that for us, that warmth, that ease. By the time I pulled into their driveway, my hands were shaking. Not from nerves, from hope. Stupid, stubborn hope that maybe tonight would be different. That maybe we'd talk and laugh and remember why we loved each other. Their house sat at the end of a quiet street in Buckhead. Tall, modern, all glass and sharp angles. It looked expensive. Cold. I grabbed the bags from my back seat, the cookie tins, the wrapped gifts, the envelope tucked carefully into my purse. I walked up the stone pathway to their front door, rang the bell, and waited. The door opened. Selena stood there in all black. No smile, no greeting. She just stepped aside and let me in like I was a delivery person dropping off a package. I walked into their home and felt the cold immediately. Not just temperature, something deeper. The air felt heavy, unwelcoming. There were no decorations, no tree in the corner, no stockings, no candles, nothing that said Christmas, nothing that said family, just white walls and silence. Dorian sat on the couch scrolling through his phone. He glanced up, nodded, then went back to his screen. My chest tightened, and I knew. I knew before we even sat down for dinner. This wasn't going to be the night I hoped for. This was going to be the night everything changed.
They had set the table, I'll give them that much. 3 plates, 3 forks, 3 glasses of water, a roasted chicken in the center that looked like it came from the grocery store deli, some green beans, a bowl of rice. Nothing homemade, nothing special, just food to get through. I sat down across from them and tried to start a conversation. "The chicken smells good," I said, even though it didn't smell like much of anything. Selena cut into her portion without looking at me. "It's fine." Dorian nodded, chewing, eyes still on his phone. I took a bite. It was dry. I swallowed it down with water and tried again. "So, how's work been? You mentioned that big project last month." "Wrapped up," Dorian said flatly. "Oh, that's good. Did it go well?" He shrugged. "Yeah." Silence dropped over the table like a blanket, heavy, suffocating.
I could hear every sound. The scrape of forks against plates, the hum of their refrigerator, the ticking clock on the wall behind me. Each second felt longer than the last. I set my fork down gently, folded my hands in my lap. "I brought you both something," I said, trying to keep my voice light, warm. "Just some cookies and a little—" Selena's fork hit her plate with a sharp clang. I froze. She looked at me for the first time since I'd arrived. Her eyes were hard, flat. "Loretta," she said slowly, deliberately, "we don't need anything from you." The way she said my name, not Mom, not even Miss Reddy, just Loretta, like I was a stranger, a solicitor at the door. I blinked, confused. "Baby, it's just cookies. I made them for—" "We don't need your money either." Her voice was sharper now, cutting. I mouth opened, but nothing came out. "My what?" I finally managed. Dorian sighed, a long, tired sigh, like I was exhausting him just by existing. He rubbed his forehead with one hand and set his phone down on the table. "Mama," he said, and his voice was different, colder, distant. "We know you've been saving things, keeping things, trying to act like we need help." He said help like it was something dirty, something shameful. "I've never—" "Look," Selena leaned forward, elbows on the table, her tone shifted. Not loud, but firm, rehearsed, like she'd been practicing this speech. "Loretta, we don't need your money or you interfering. We're fine. We're actually doing really well." The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. Dorian nodded along, agreeing, supporting her, backing her up like they were a united front and I was the enemy. Then he said it. The sentence that cracked me open. "Yeah, Ma, we don't really need you." The words hung in the air. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't process what I just heard. My son, my only child, the baby I carried for 9 months, the baby I rocked through colic and sleepless nights, the kid I worked myself to exhaustion for, the man I loved more than my own life. He just told me he didn't need me. At 62 years old, after surviving cancer, after raising him alone, after giving him every single piece of myself, he didn't need me. My hands started to shake, but I wouldn't cry. Not here, not in front of them. I reached into my purse, pulled out the envelope. The one I'd been carrying all week. The one I thought we'd open together over coffee and laughter. I placed it on the table between us. Gently, carefully. "That's all I needed to hear," I said quietly. Selena's eyes locked onto the envelope like a hawk spotting prey. She snatched it up before I could even pull my hand back, ripped it open. Her eyes scanned the pages inside. The deed to the duplex, the savings account statements, the financial documents I'd organized so carefully. She looked up at Dorian, then back at the papers. Then she laughed. Actually laughed, a short, sharp sound that cut through the silence like glass breaking. So this is what she wanted to brag about? She thought we needed this. She waved the papers at Dorian, smirking. Dorian glanced at the documents. His face didn't change. No curiosity, no gratitude, no emotion at all. Selena tossed the envelope onto the counter like it was junk mail. It slid across the marble surface and landed near the sink. My life's work, my security, my legacy. Treated like trash. Dorian didn't pick it up, didn't ask what it was, didn't care. I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak, but I forced them to hold me. I should go. I said, "Don't make this dramatic, Ma." Dorian's voice was so calm, so casual, like we just had a minor disagreement about dinner plans. Responsible. That word echoed in my head. I raised him, fed him, clothed him, educated him, loved him, worked cancer while still making sure he had everything he needed. And now I wasn't responsible for him? Now I was the problem? I picked up my coat from the back of the chair, pulled it on slowly, buttoned it with trembling fingers. Selena crossed her arms, watching me like she was waiting for me to apologize, to beg, to fall apart. But I didn't give her that. I wrapped my scarf around my neck, picked up my purse. "Thank you," I said softly. Selena frowned. "For what?" I looked at her, then at Dorian, my son, my baby, the person I would have died for without hesitation. I looked at them and said, "For clarity." And I walked out.
Here's what they didn't understand. What they couldn't have known because they never bothered to ask. That envelope wasn't an offer. It wasn't me begging them to take my money or my property or my help. It was a notification. 1 week before Christmas, I sat in my lawyer's office on a gray Monday morning and changed my will. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of clarity. The kind of clarity that comes when you stop lying to yourself. I'd been holding on to this fantasy, this dream that one day Dorian would wake up and remember who I was, what I'd done, how much I'd sacrificed. But people don't forget love. They choose to ignore it. And my son had been choosing to ignore me for years. He didn't call unless he needed something. He didn't visit unless it was convenient. He didn't check on me after doctor's appointments or during the holidays or when I told him my knees were acting up again from the chemo. He just wasn't there. But Journey was. My niece, my brother's daughter, the girl I helped raise during those long summers when her parents were working double shifts, just like I was. Journey called me every Sunday, not because she had to, because she wanted to. She drove me to every cancer treatment, sat with me in those cold rooms while poison dripped into my veins, held my hand when I cried, made me laugh when I wanted to give up. She cleaned my gutters without me asking, brought me groceries when I was too weak to shop, stayed overnight when I was scared to be alone. She loved me loud. And love like that doesn't go unnoticed. So I made a decision. I sat across from my lawyer, a kind man named Gerald who'd handled my parents' estate years ago, and I told him exactly what I wanted. I'm removing Dorian from my will. Completely. Gerald looked up from his notepad. "Are you sure, Loretta?" I nodded. "I'm sure." "And who do you want to designate as your primary beneficiary?" "Journey," I said, without hesitation. Everything goes to her. The duplex, the savings, all of it. He wrote it down carefully, then looked at me again. "You understand this is final once you sign." I understand. And I did. Love isn't about blood. It's about presence. It's about showing up. It's about action. Dorian stopped showing up years ago. Journey never did. So that Monday morning, I signed the papers. I made it legal. I made it real. And I thought,
foolishly maybe, that I'd explain it to Dorian on Christmas Eve, gently, with love, that I'd help him understand why I made this choice, that maybe it would wake him up. But I didn't get the chance, because he told me he didn't need me first. And that envelope they tossed aside like garbage, it was just a copy. The real one was already filed, already done.
I should have left right then, walked out the door, driven home. Let it be over. But I stood there in their entryway for a moment, reaching for my coat on the hook, and that's when I heard it. Selena's voice, low, hissed, coming from the kitchen where she'd followed Dorian. She thought I couldn't hear, but I could. Good. Now she knows we don't need her money. Your dad will co-sign the mortgage anyway. I froze. My hand still on my coat, my breath caught in my throat. Mortgage. They were buying a house. That's what this was about. Not boundaries, not independence, not them being fine on their own. They wanted my money. They'd been expecting me to offer, to volunteer my savings, to hand over part of the duplex value, to play the role of the generous mother who swoops in and solves all their problems. And when I didn't offer fast enough, when I didn't jump at the chance to fund their next big move, they decided to cut me off first, to reject me before I could say no. My chest felt tight, hot, like something inside me was burning. Dorian's voice drifted out next, quieter, defensive. She would have made it weird, Selena. You know how she is, always wanting to be involved, always asking questions. Always wanting to be involved. In my son's life. Imagine that. I pulled my coat on, buttoned it slowly. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady, cold. Selena walked back into the living room first, saw me standing there. Her face didn't change. No guilt, no shame, just irritation, like I was taking too long to leave. Dorian followed. He looked at me with that same tired expression, that same exhaustion. "Ma, don't make this dramatic," he said again, slower this time, like I was a child who needed simple instructions. "We just don't want you thinking you're responsible for us." Responsible. There was that word again. I looked at him. Really looked at him. This man standing in front of me, tall, well-dressed, healthy, used to be a little boy who cried when I left for work, who made me Mother's Day cards out of construction paper and glitter, who told me I was the best mama in the world. Where did that boy go? When did he disappear? And who was the stranger wearing his face? I didn't ask those questions out loud. There was no point. Instead, I adjusted my scarf, picked up my purse. "I hope you get the house you want," I said quietly. Selena's eyes narrowed, suspicious, like she was trying to figure out if I was being sarcastic. I wasn't. I meant it. I hoped they got everything they wanted. Because I finally understood something I'd been too afraid to admit for years. They didn't love me. Maybe they used to. Maybe Dorian did when he was young and I was all he had. But somewhere along the way, I became a convenience, a resource, a backup plan. Not a mother, not a person, just a source of money they could tap into when they needed it. And when I didn't offer it freely, when I didn't jump at the chance to fund their next big move, they decided to cut me off first, to reject me before I could say no.
I walked toward the door. Dorian called after me. "Ma, come on. Don't leave like this." I stopped, hand on the doorknob. I didn't turn around. "Like what?" I asked. "Like we did something wrong." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I opened the door, stepped out into the cold December night. The air hit my face, sharp, clean, honest. I turned back one last time. Dorian stood in the doorway, Selena behind him, both of them watching me, waiting. "Thank you," I said again. "For what?" Dorian asked, frustrated now. I looked him in the eye. My son, my only child. For clarity. And I walked down those steps, got into my car, and drove away from the people I thought were my family. The cookies were still on their coffee table, the envelope still on their counter, and I never looked back.
I made it halfway down their driveway before I heard my name. "Miss Reddy." I turned. Mrs. Carlyle stood at the edge of her yard next door, wrapped in a thick bathrobe and slippers. She was older than me by at least 10 years. A widow, lived alone with 2 cats and a garden she tended like children. We'd spoken a few times over the years when I'd visited Dorian. Pleasant conversations, nothing deep, just neighborly. But tonight her face looked concerned. "You okay, sweetheart?" She shuffled toward me slowly, her breath visible in the cold air. I heard yelling earlier. I opened my mouth to lie, to say everything was fine, to protect my son the way I always had. But I couldn't. The words wouldn't come. I just stood there, holding my purse and my coat and all the weight I'd been carrying for years. Mrs. Carlyle reached out and touched my arm gently. "You don't have to say anything, honey. I just wanted to make sure you were all right." I nodded, tried to smile, failed. Then she said something that made my knees weak. "Those 2 been arguing for days about that loan they expected from you." Her voice was soft, careful, like she knew she was stepping into something painful. I told my husband before he passed, I said, "That girl doesn't appreciate her mother-in-law one bit." I stared at her. "Days?" I whispered. She nodded. "I heard them through the walls last week, loud, going back and forth about how much they thought you'd give them, how they were counting on it. Counting on it. Not hoping, not asking, counting, like I was a bank, a resource, a guaranteed transaction." My stomach turned. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," Mrs. Carlyle said quietly. "I didn't mean to upset you more. I just thought you should know." I thanked her. I don't remember what I said exactly. My voice felt far away, like it belonged to someone else. I got into my car, closed the door, locked it. And then I broke. The tears came fast and hot and relentless. My whole body shook. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't a bad night or a misunderstanding. It was a plan, a scheme. They'd invited me over to reject me, to cut me down before I could say no to their demands. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from Dorian. "Don't be petty, Ma. We still love you. We just need boundaries." Boundaries. I read that word 5 times. Then I turned my phone off. Completely off. And I drove home through streets full of Christmas lights and families and joy I couldn't feel anymore.
Here's what Dorian and Selena never bothered to learn, what they never asked about, because they assumed they already knew. The duplex wasn't my only asset. 2 years ago, before my second round of treatment, I had to make some decisions, hard ones. The kind you make when you're staring down your own mortality and wondering what you'll leave behind. My parents hadn't just left me that duplex in Atlanta. They'd also left me a small piece of land in South Carolina. 10 acres of nothing special, just trees and red dirt, and memories of summers spent running barefoot through tall grass. I'd held on to it for decades. Sentimental reasons mostly. But when the cancer came back, I realized sentiment doesn't pay medical bills. So I sold it. A developer wanted it, paid cash, closed in 30 days. That sale left me with $480,000. I sat in the bank the day that money cleared, staring at the number on the screen, and I cried. Not because I was rich. I wasn't. But because for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared. Scared of losing my home. Scared of becoming a burden. Scared of dying and leaving nothing behind but debt. I took that money and I did what any smart woman would do. I invested most of it, carefully, conservatively. Working with a financial advisor Journey helped me find. Someone who understood I didn't want to gamble. I just wanted security. The rest, I put into a high-yield savings account. Untouched. Growing quietly. Only 3 people knew about that money. My lawyer, Gerald, my pastor, Reverend Miles, and Journey. Not because I was secretive, but because I'd learned something painful over the years. People treat you differently when they know you have money, especially family. I'd planned to use part of that money to help Dorian start the business he'd been talking about for years, some kind of consulting firm. He had the vision, the connections, just not the capital. I was going to be his capital. I'd already talked to Gerald about setting up a small business loan, something official, with terms, interest, a real agreement. Not a gift, a loan. Because I wanted to teach him something important, that money isn't free, that building something takes work and accountability and respect. But I never got the chance. Because every time I tried to bring it up, every time I started the conversation, Dorian would cut me off. Ma, I don't need a lecture. Ma, I've got it handled. Ma, you wouldn't understand the business side of things. So I stopped trying. And I watched him struggle. Watched him complain about not having opportunities. Watched Selena pressure him to make more money, get promoted faster, be more successful. All while the solution sat in an account with my name on it. Waiting. But here's the thing about giving. You can't give to people who don't value you. You can't pour into people who see you as a transaction. Because love without respect becomes gasoline in someone else's hands. And they'll burn you with it every single time. That Christmas Eve, driving home with tears streaming down my face, I realized something powerful. I'd been holding on to this money, this security, this future, and I'd been treating it like it was meant for Dorian. But it wasn't. It was meant for me, for my life, my peace, my freedom, for the people who actually loved me, and Dorian wasn't one of them anymore. Maybe he never really was. That money I'd saved, invested, grown carefully over 2 years, it was mine. And I was going to spend it on a life that didn't include people who only wanted me when I was useful.
Christmas morning came quiet. I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, alone. And for the first time in years, that didn't scare me. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, watched the sun come up through my window. No tears, no regrets, just silence. The kind of silence that feels like relief. I picked up my phone, turned it back on, watched the notifications flood in. 7 texts from Dorian, 4 from Selena, all of them saying the same thing in different ways. You're overreacting. This is ridiculous. We didn't mean it like that. Family doesn't act like this. Family doesn't act like this.
I almost laughed. I blocked both their numbers, not out of anger, not out of punishment, out of self-preservation, because I finally understood something I should have known years ago. You can't heal in the same place that hurt you. At noon, my phone rang. "Journey." "Merry Christmas, Auntie," she said, her voice warm and bright. "You coming over or what?" I hadn't told her what happened, hadn't called her crying or venting or asking for advice. But she knew. Somehow she always knew. "I'll be there in an hour," I said. "Good. Maurice is making his famous mac and cheese, and I told him you're the judge." I smiled. A real smile. The first one in days. Journey and her partner Maurice lived in a small townhouse in Decatur. It was cozy, lived in, full of plants and music and laughter. When I walked in, Journey hugged me so tight I almost broke again. "I'm proud of you," she whispered in my ear. I didn't ask how she knew. I just held on. We spent Christmas Day cooking, talking, laughing. They asked me about my health, my plans, my dreams. Not my money, not what I could do for them, just me. Maurice told terrible jokes that made Journey groan and me laugh until my stomach hurt. We played cards, watched old movies, ate until we couldn't move. And when it was time to go home, Journey walked me to my car. "You know you're always welcome here, right?" she said. "You're not alone, Auntie. You've never been alone." I cried then, but they were good tears, the kind that wash things clean. In January, I went back to Gerald's office. "I want to update my will again," I told him. He raised an eyebrow. "More changes?" "No, I want to make sure it can't be contested. I want it airtight." He nodded slowly. "You think your son will challenge it?" "I think his wife will." We spent 2 hours going over every detail, every clause, every protection. When we finished, Gerald leaned back in his chair. "You're doing the right thing, Loretta, for what it's worth." "Thank you." A week later, I wrote a check, $20,000, to the women's shelter on Memorial Drive. The same shelter I'd stayed in for 1 month 20 years ago when I finally left Dorian's father, when I had nothing but a 6-year-old boy and a garbage bag full of clothes. They'd given me a bed, meals, safety, hope. And now I could give back. The director cried when I handed her the check. She said, "This will change lives." I told her, "It already did. Mine." In February, I booked a flight. Phoenix, Arizona. My friend Carolyn from nursing school lived there. We'd kept in touch over the years. Christmas cards, birthday calls, promises to visit that we never kept. Until now. I stayed with her for 2 weeks. We hiked, we talked, we sat by her pool and drank iced tea and remembered who we were before life got complicated. "You seem different," she said one afternoon. "Different how?" "Lighter." She was right. I felt lighter, like I'd been carrying a weight for so long I forgot it was there. And when I finally put it down, I could breathe again. Before I left Phoenix, I sent Dorian one message. Just one. "Love is not owed. It is shown. I wish you well, but I am choosing myself." I didn't expect a response. 10 days later, I got one. "Selena is pregnant." I stared at those 3 words for a long time. My first grandchild. A baby I'd never hold, never rock, never sing to. My heart wavered, just for a moment, but only a moment, because I knew the truth. That baby wouldn't be mine either. It would be a bargaining chip, a tool, another way to make me feel guilty, another way to pull me back in. I typed my response carefully. "I hope you treat that child with the love and grace you forgot to show me." Then I deleted his number, permanently. And I moved forward, into a life that was finally, completely mine.
Spring came, then summer. I planted tomatoes in my backyard, joined a book club at the library, started taking water aerobics classes at the Y on Tuesday and Thursday mornings.
I laughed with women my age who understood what it meant to rebuild yourself after everything falls apart. I lived, not just existed, not just survived. I lived. One evening in late August, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Hello? Ready? It's Diane Carlisle, from next door to your son's place. Mrs. Carlisle. I hadn't thought about her in months. Oh, hello, Mrs. Carlisle. How are you? I'm fine, honey. I thought you should know something. My stomach tightened. What is it? She hesitated, then spoke gently, carefully. They moved out, your son and his wife. Last week, the house went into pre-foreclosure. There's a sign in the yard now. I sat down slowly on my couch. Pre-foreclosure. They'd lost the house, or were about to. Their loan must have fell through, Mrs. Carlisle continued. I heard his father backed out last minute. Something about their credit. I don't know all the details, honey. I just thought you'd want to know they're gone. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, justified, proven right. But I didn't. I just felt sad. Sad for the life my son could have had if he'd chosen differently. Sad for the relationship we could have built if he'd valued me. Sad for the grandchild who'd grow up in a home where love was conditional. Thank you for telling me, I said quietly. Are you okay? I am. And I meant it. After we hung up, I sat there for a while in the quiet. I thought about calling him, checking in, offering help. But I didn't, because I'd learned something these past months. When people push away the hands that held them, they often fall harder than they expected. And when they finally realize it, when they hit the ground and look around for who's left, it's never because the hand stopped giving. It's because they stopped appreciating it. I whispered into the empty room, I hope you're okay, baby. But I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't reach out. I just sat with the sadness for a moment. Then I let it go. And I got up and made myself dinner. Because life goes on, with or without the people who couldn't see your worth. I never wanted revenge. That's not what this story is about. I wanted respect. I wanted to be seen. I wanted my son to remember that I was a person, not just a resource. And when he couldn't give me that, I had to choose myself. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. It's understanding that your peace matters more than their comfort. It's knowing that love without action is just a word people use to keep you around when it's convenient. I found peace, real peace, the kind that doesn't need validation or apology or reconciliation. I found family in the people who showed up, who called, who cared. And I learned that blood doesn't make you family. Love does. Presence does. Consistency does. So if you're out there holding on to people who only want you when you're useful, let me tell you something. Let go. Choose yourself. Build a life with people who see you, who value you, who love you loudly. Because you deserve more than crumbs from people who should be giving you the whole table. I'm Loretta Hawkins. I'm 62 years old, and I finally chose me. And it was the best decision I ever made.